Great. So our nature news from the wood this week is all about wildflowers and trees. So wildflowers and trees are all plants. Last week we looked at butterflies and moths and or 2 weeks ago, and their habitat requirements. So we all know that they all depend on plants for food and shelter, and plants have their own specific needs to survive and thrive. So an oak sapling won't grow well in the shade, in kind of dense shade under other trees, but it will grow well in an open area, like some of them around here and this one in this picture. And yeah, so plants may also create different habitats themselves. So an obvious example would be a woodland made up of trees. Yeah, so wildflowers are also adapted to different conditions. Why is my photo not coming up? Can you see my next photo? Oh, okay, just being slow. So yeah, wildflowers are also adapted to different conditions, and some grow well in shady areas, like bluebells, and others will only grow in open areas, like daisies and buttercups, which hopefully you can see now. And the species that are adapted to shady woodland habitat often flower earlier in the year. So the next photo is wood anemone, and these species quite often come out earlier in the year while the trees are without leaves, so more sunlight's reaching the ground, rather than later in the year when they'd be totally shaded out by the new leaves. So, and because we find different species in different habitats, we aim to maintain and enhance a wide variety of habitats at Hazel Hill Wood through our practical conservation work. A lot of it with volunteers, some of you guys, in order to support a diverse range of species. So I'm going to talk a bit about identification of wildflowers and trees. So wildflowers are much easier to identify when they're in flower. And it is possible to identify species when there are just leaves and no flowers, but it's generally much more difficult. So it's often best to start with the flower, and then you may need to look at the leaves to distinguish species. So most people would recognise this as a foxglove once the flowers come out, but earlier in the year you might not see these leaves and think foxglove. I do, but I don't think everyone would. And the next picture, so this you might think looks like a buttercup superficially, but it is in fact a plant called Lesser Celandine, and one of the ways that you can distinguish it from other species is the leaves, just the shape of the leaves and the colour. And the next photo is an umbellifer, and this species is Pignut, so there are quite a few different species, and other similar species include cow parsley and wild carrot. So with these, again, the leaves help distinguish it from the other species, as well as the size. So this is a small plant. So now we're going to move on to trees. Everybody loves trees, and in our first takeaway session we had some confessions from participants who have found themselves hugging trees during lockdown, which they hadn't done since they were children. That was nice to hear, and I wasn't ashamed to admit that I've never stopped hugging trees. So many people at Hazel Hill, many people who come to Hazel Hill Wood comment that trees and woodland are really important to them, sort of over and above other natural habitats like grassland. So here in this photo, can you see my cursor? Julie, could you give me a thumbs up? You see my cursor or not? Maybe not. Oh, thank you. So in this photo, over here on the left, I wouldn't be able to tell from a photo, but it's because I know where it is. This is some young hornbeam, and then in the middle this is a tall birch tree, and then over on the right here is hazel, and that with the hazel the shape really does help you or me identify it, and then above the hazel we've got Scots pine, a Scots pine branch. Yeah, So in contrast to wildflowers, trees can often be easily identified from their leaves. So these are sweet chestnut leaves, very distinctive in shape and size as well. So they're long, they're quite big, and they've got these serrated or toothed edges to the leaf. And now the next photo is of the tree that the sweet chestnut leaf came from. So this is a young sweet chestnut tree, and it has smooth bark, but as it gets bigger and older, the bark will become more rough and fissured. So beech trees, in contrast, remain smooth. The bark remains smooth as they get older. And the next photo, these are willow leaves. There are lots of different species of willow. This is probably goat willow, but they often hybridize just to confuse things. So as well as leaves, the shape of the tree can help you identify what species it is. So here is the willow tree, and it's been pollarded. So that means it's been cut at a certain height, maybe 5 or 6 feet off the ground. And this is a common practice for willow trees, and it can actually increase their lifespan. So if they're not coppiced, so coppicing is when you cut them down to the ground, or pollarded, which is when you cut them up higher. If you don't do that, then they have a tendency to fall over, and they do often resprout and stay alive, but they won't live as long as if they are pollarded like this. And so we've got someone joining. And so the last thing I'm going to talk about in our nature news is planting native species. So planting native species in your garden will likely have more benefit for wildlife than planting cultivated and exotic plants. So for example, that's a common blue butterfly, and the food plant of the caterpillar is this yellow flower, or one of the very few larval food plants is what we call them. So one of the very few plants that the caterpillars will feed on is bird's foot trefoil, and they won't feed on exotic garden plants. And the female, which is pictured feeding on the nectar here, won't lay her eggs on other plants. So it's really important that we have those plants. So you might see the adult in your garden feeding on nectar, but you wouldn't see eggs and caterpillars in your garden. Now the next photo probably looks a bit strange, and inside this rolled up leaf is a beetle larva. So the female leaf roller weevil, which is the type of beetle, prepares the leaf and lays an egg, and then the larva feeds inside, relatively safe from potential predators. So that's the technical term is a scarce notable bee species, and it basically means that they're not sure if they're rare, but they're uncommon. So it's a great record to get for this wood, and that's not something that I could identify here. We had a beetle specialist come to our BioBlitz 2018 and 2019 who found them. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the BioBlitz this year due to COVID, but hopefully we'll do that again next year. So if you're interested, let me know and I can keep you informed, or we'll be sharing it in our newsletter, which hopefully you're all signed up to. So as well as being less beneficial for other wildlife, some non-native species can become a real problem. So plants that were brought here in the past as ornamental garden plants can become invasive, like rhododendron and Japanese knotweed and Himalayan balsam. We're quite lucky at Hazel Hill Wood that we don't have any invasive plants that I can think of, non-native invasives. But so this is a picture of Hazel Hill Wood, but on other nature reserves, some nature reserves, a huge amount of effort goes into controlling these species that have become a problem. So I mentioned Himalayan balsam. It's quite pretty. It's a very tall plant with pink flowers, and but it grows rapidly and spreads quickly, smothering other vegetation as it goes. And each plant can produce up to 800 seeds. and these are often carried by rivers further downstream, so you find them in wet places. Yeah, so plants and animals brought into the UK from other countries are less likely to be affected by things that normally keep their numbers down in the places they come from. So like competing plants, animals, pests. So they've evolved in different conditions, and some of them can just take advantage of not having the negative things that affect them in the place they come from. So native plants are much more likely to be beneficial. And yeah, so we all love oaks, or some of us love oaks. An oak tree can support up to 300 species of insect. So it's yeah, really great for wildlife. So that is our nature news. I hope you've learned something about wildflowers and trees. And now I'm going to pass over to Julie for our well-being exercise.